Well, good day, viewers. Today we're working on a 2016 Buick Enclave. It's only got 58,000 kilometers on it, and the customer's complaining about a noise in the front wheels. I'm driving on a gravel road, and there's a bit of a hum, like a wheel bearing type noise. So it's not tires, because tires won't make noise on a gravel road. We're going to get on pavement in a second here and reevaluate it. So at 80 kilometers, 50 miles an hour, you can hear a hum. Let's see if it's load sensitive. So when you turn to the left, the noise gets predominantly worse. I gotta wait for this car to go by, going the other way. So I'm turning left, turning right. It's definitely a front wheel bearing noise. So usually if the noise gets worse when we turn to the left, like this, and diminishes when we turn to the right, you're putting a stress on the right wheel bearing turning left, or load shifting to it. So it's usually the right side when it gets worse turning left, but sometimes I've been fooled. So when you're trying to find a noisy wheel bearing, first thing you want to look for is play in the wheel bearing, and there don't appear to be any play. What I find works sometimes is if you grab the coil spring, squeeze the two coils as tight as you can, and then spin the wheel. You can feel the roughness in the bearing. I don't feel anything on this side. We're going to check the other side. So now we're going to check the right side. No play. And we're going to spin it. Inconclusive. I find that you can't run these on the hoist with the traction control system and StabiliTrak system. Even if you try to disable traction control, it goes mental on you. I'm going to check the rear. Sometimes you can use the bearing temperature with the thermal imaging camera to see if there's a warm one. Now it's already been sitting on the hoist here for half an hour. This side measures about 85 to 86 degrees Fahrenheit, and the left side is about 80. So, and I'm shooting it right at the, right at the bearing surface there, where the reluctor is. It's hard to see there, 79, 80. So, based on the fact that it was louder when you put weight on the right side when turning left, and this bearing is a few degrees warmer, I'm going to call the right wheel bearing. I can't feel any play or roughness in it. Could put stethoscope. I put the stethoscope on it and spun it here by hand, and I can't hear anything. But there's no load on the bearing now. So remove the wheel, of course, and the brake caliper as an assembly by taking off the two 13/16 or 21 mil bolts. Hang the brake caliper with some kind of fixture. I've got these little hooks out of the hardware store, but you can use bungee cord, tie wraps, just so it's not stressing the brake hose. Now we got to remove these T30 or T25. Well, there's only one Torx to get the rotor off. Inspect the brakes while you're here. These brakes are in pretty good shape. There's at least 50% remaining. And we're going to remove the rotor and the axle nut. So the axle nut's 34 mil. Take it off and then put it on flush and use a hammer to tap the axle shaft in. It's surprising how rusty this thing is for a 16. But that was seized in there. I have a special pushing tool, but it doesn't fit this bolt pattern, believe it or not. It's only for lighter cars, which sucks. I like to use an impact screwdriver to remove this because it usually strips if you don't. Hit the end of the screw a few times with the ball peen hammer to shock it, otherwise tend to break the tip on the impact screwdriver. So it must be nice working in California where everything's rust free. So I like to install a longer sacrificial bolt in here, so that I've drilled a whole pilot hole in the center of it so that my air chisel doesn't slip off. And you can hit this side of the flange with a hammer, but this side with the backing plate is difficult. So I'll show you what I do here. So once you get that bolt in there, use an air chisel with a bit like this, which is also homemade. As I said, it's pretty snug in there. That's not good. Oh well. Well, let's try this again. So far I've been air chiseling this thing and hitting it, and it's not coming free. Wow. Half an hour to change the wheel bearing. Well, it's coming. About a 1/16 of an inch. pounded out my hole in the end of the bolt. I gotta get a new bolt. So I got a new drill bolt in there. We'll try again. Yeah, I think it's coming now, finally. Can't swing at it that way. Wow. You gotta be careful that the axle doesn't bust that speed sensor off. I don't dare try to remove that speed sensor because it'll probably bust off in the knuckle. So you can see that the wheel bearing housing is cast steel and the steering knuckle is cast aluminum. So you get this differences of metal and galvanic corrosion, and it goes in about a little bit better than ½ an inch in here. So we got it off, and there's the speed sensor I said we have to be conscious of. It was rusted in the spline here as well, but all that hammering shook the rust loose. So we'll use a die grinder to clean this bore and put never seeds on it, so that if we have to change this wheel bearing in the future, hopefully it comes apart a little easier. But can you imagine when this truck is 20 years old? Right now it's only 6. Wow. Hammered on this so much the stud started to fall out. Like I said, I have this pressing tool here for pressing the axle shaft out, but it doesn't go 6 studs, and the 2 studs across from each other are not wide enough to knock the extra studs out. So somebody needs to make one of those to press the axle shaft in for a 6 1/8 stud truck. So I cleaned the inside of the bore with a die grinder and a bit, and the surface with a Rolox sanding disc. Cleaned up the backing plate. Some guys like to use a pry bar in here, but it tends to bugger up the backing plate and the knuckle, so that's why I use the bolts from the back, and it usually works pretty good. Now you notice this spacer washer in here, make sure that's in there, it didn't stick on the wheel bearing. I don't know why they put that there. It's got to have something to do with, but it make sure it's there. Put some Loctite on the 3 bolts. Don't put any never sees on the threads. We're going to put some Loctite on there. So I prefer to use SKF bearings. You can buy cheaper ones, but I don't think they have the quality. And that's the part number. So the torque on the 3 bolts that hold the hub in is 82 foot-pounds. And like I said, I like to put some Loctite on there for extra security. I believe the torque on this is 175 foot-pounds, but we're going to put the caliper, the rotor and the caliper on so that we can hold this to tighten it and torque it. So use a Rolox sanding disc to clean the mating surface of the rotor to the spindle or the bearing hub. I like to put a little coating of never sees on there. I cut my never sees with gear oil. So I made a mistake earlier. Those 3 hub bolts are actually 89 foot-pounds, not 82. And the brake caliper mounting bolts are 129 foot-pounds. And I put Loctite on them as well. Put Loctite on this nut and it's 173. If you put the brake caliper on and a suitable pry bar tool in there between the fins, you can torque this without an assistant to hold the brake. Takes quite a bit of force. You don't want to over tighten it, and you don't want to leave it loose because the wheel bearing will be compromised if you do. So next to put the wheel on, and we got to do a service on this. Well, the noise appears to be gone. Any change in pitch. There's no noise now. So that's good. Now he's got to look forward to the other side. Thanks for watching.